While Moscow rang in the new year with speeches about strength, stability, and inevitable victory, something very different was unfolding in the dark skies over Russia. In a sweeping, coordinated operation that stunned military analysts, Ukraine launched one of the largest and deepest drone offensives of the entire war, striking targets across vast stretches of Russian territory, from the Baltic Sea near St. Petersburg all the way to occupied Crimea on the Black Sea. This was not a symbolic attack. This was not a message shot across the bow. This was a calculated demonstration of reach, capability, and intent, one that directly challenged the Kremlin's most carefully guarded narrative, that Russia's homeland is secure. A strike, unlike any before. Over a 24-hour period, Ukrainian forces launched approximately 95 long-range unmanned aerial vehicles in a synchronized assault spanning thousands of kilometers. The scale alone was extraordinary, but the geography was even more shocking. Drones appeared over St. Petersburg's wider region, Bryansk, Oryol, and Kursk-Sevastopol, and military sites across Crimea. This wasn't a single attack. It was a swarm arriving from multiple directions, nearly simultaneously, overwhelming Russia's air defense command structure. And at the center of it all was one critical target, the heart of the attack: Luga. The primary objective was the Luga oil and gas terminal on the Baltic Sea, one of Russia's most important energy export hubs. Operated by Novatek, one of Russia's largest energy companies, Luga processes gas condensate into products like jet fuel, naphtha, and gas oil. These are not just commercial commodities. They are key revenue streams feeding Russia's war economy. Satellite imagery and geolocated videos circulating on social media showed large fires and visible damage at the facility, despite official Russian claims that the situation was quickly contained. What makes this strike extraordinary is the distance. From Ukrainian-controlled territory to Luga is over 1,000 kilometers, a journey that requires advanced navigation, endurance, and planning. This alone places the attack in a different category from earlier drone strikes. How did Ukraine do this? Military analysts believe that Ukraine relied on domestically produced long-range platforms, including modified UJ-22 airborne drones, possibly converted Aeropract A-22 light aircraft, repurposed into one-way attack drones. These systems are not high-end, billion-dollar weapons. They are cheap, adaptable, and built using commercially available engines and navigation components. That's the point. Ukraine isn't trying to match Russia missile for missile. It's forcing Russia to spend millions of dollars in air defense interceptors to shoot down drones that cost a fraction of that price. This is asymmetric warfare at its most effective, threading the needle through Russia's defenses. To reach their targets, these drones had to evade one of the most heavily advertised air defense networks in the world. Their likely flight paths hugged river valleys and forested terrain, exploited low-altitude radar blind spots, avoided dense coverage around Moscow while slipping through thinner defenses over rural Russia. Winter conditions may have actually helped. While snow, icing, and low visibility complicate drone operations, they also degrade optical and infrared tracking systems used by short-range air defenses. Long winter nights provided hours of concealment. And crucially, the attacks arrived almost simultaneously across multiple regions, north, south, and southwest, forcing Russian commanders to respond everywhere at once. That's how defenses break. This was no accident. It was evolution. This strike represents the culmination of a year-long transformation in Ukraine's approach to warfare. Early in the war, Ukrainian attacks inside Russia were rare and symbolic. That changed after the Kerch Strait Bridge attack in October 2022, which proved that deep strikes could deliver real psychological and strategic impact. Since then, Ukraine has methodically expanded its campaign: airfields, fuel depots, defense factories, logistics hubs. This New Year's drone wave came just days after a devastating strike on Belgorod, and in direct response to Russia's own mass missile attacks on Ukrainian cities. The message is unmistakable: there is no sanctuary anymore. A direct challenge to Putin. The timing, immediately after Vladimir Putin's New Year address, was no coincidence. While the Kremlin spoke of resilience and control, Ukrainian drones were burning a major energy terminal just kilometers from Putin's hometown of St. Petersburg. Politically, this is deeply damaging. For decades, Putin's legitimacy has rested on one promise above all others: stability and security. This attack undermines both. Inside Russia, the fallout will be fierce. The Ministry of Defense will face renewed criticism from pro-war nationalists who already accuse it of incompetence. The FSB will be pressed to explain how such an operation went undetected. Rival security institutions will quietly point fingers. This kind of failure breeds internal tension, and authoritarian systems are especially vulnerable to blame games. The psychological shock for many Russians, especially in major cities like St. Petersburg, this attack hit differently. These urban centers have largely been insulated from the war's violence. Now, suddenly, the war is visible, audible, close. Despite state media insisting most drones were intercepted, Telegram channels and social media tell a different story. Flames, explosions, and chaos. That gap between official narrative and lived reality matters. It replaces passive support with anxiety. It turns distant war into personal uncertainty. And that quietly erodes the social contract that has sustained the Kremlin for years. Economic warfare. In real time. Strategically, this attack is about money. Energy exports are the lifeblood of the Russian state. Even short disruptions introduce higher insurance costs, logistical complications, risk premiums for buyers. The real damage isn't just what burned, it's what the attack signals. No part of Russia's energy infrastructure is safe. Now Moscow faces a brutal dilemma: pull air defense systems like S-400s and Pantsir S-1s from the Ukrainian front, or leave critical economic assets exposed. Either choice benefits Ukraine. Defending thousands of kilometers of pipelines, refineries, ports, and terminals is a logistical nightmare and an economic drain. How the world is reading this, international reactions mirror the global divide. Ukraine's Western allies continue to affirm Ukraine's right to self-defense while carefully maintaining distance from direct involvement in strikes on Russian soil. But behind closed doors, this changes the conversation. If Ukraine can degrade Russia's war economy with cheap, domestically produced drones, the logic for expanding support becomes stronger, not weaker. In the global south, the attack reinforces doubts about Russian military invincibility. China will publicly call for de-escalation, while privately studying every vulnerability this strike exposed. Iran and North Korea, both suppliers of drone and missile technology to Russia, will be watching closely. Because this wasn't just a Ukrainian success, it was a global case study. The future of the war. This attack marks a turning point. The battlefield is no longer just trenches in eastern Ukraine. It now includes Baltic oil terminals, defense factories in the Urals. The psychological resilience of Russian society. In the short term, Russia will redeploy air defenses, launch internal security purges, likely escalate missile attacks on Ukraine, meanwhile has validated a strategy that can be scaled, repeated, and sustained. This is now a war of endurance. Industry versus innovation, depth versus adaptability, control versus resilience. Russia's greatest strategic asset, its vast territory, may be becoming its greatest weakness. And as winter tightens its grip, one reality is clear. This war is no longer confined to the front lines. It is everywhere. Why this changes everything. What makes this moment truly dangerous isn't just what Ukraine hit. It's what Russia has now lost. For the first time since the invasion began, the Kremlin can no longer pretend that distance equals safety. The illusion that Russia's vast geography provides strategic depth, an almost mythological shield that swallowed Napoleon and bled Hitler dry, is cracking under the weight of cheap drones and smart planning. Territory is no longer protection, it's exposure, and that realization is now spreading through Russia's military, political, and economic systems all at once. Russia's defense problem has no easy fix on paper. Russia possesses one of the most formidable air defense networks in the world. Systems like the S-400, Pantsir S-1, and layered radar coverage were designed to counter NATO aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic threats. But that's the problem. They were built for a different war. Ukraine isn't launching sleek stealth jets or billion-dollar missiles. It's sending slow, low-flying, low-signature drones in unpredictable swarms, forcing Russian defenses into an impossible math problem. Shoot them down, and Russia burns through expensive interceptors faster than it can replace them. Ignore them, and critical infrastructure goes up in flames. There's no winning option, only damage control. And defending everything means defending nothing well, a country too big to protect. Russia's energy and logistics infrastructure stretches across 11 time zones. Pipelines snake through forests, tundra, and remote industrial zones. Refineries and terminals sit far from dense military coverage. Rail junctions, power substations, and fuel depots were never designed to operate under constant aerial threat. To truly secure these assets, Russia would need thousands of additional air defense systems, massive radar expansion, and permanent combat readiness across civilian regions. That level of protection would cost more than the damage Ukraine could ever inflict, which means the Kremlin is now trapped in a war of diminishing returns. The strategic squeeze on the front lines, every air defense system pulled back to protect oil terminals or cities, is one less system protecting Russian troops in Ukraine. This matters. Russian forces already rely heavily on air defenses to shield supply hubs, command posts, and troop concentrations from Ukrainian missiles and aircraft. Weakening that shield creates new vulnerabilities, and Ukraine knows it. What we're seeing is a strategic squeeze. Pressure. Russia's economy at home force redeployment of defenses create openings on the battlefield. It's not about one decisive strike, it's about cumulative stress. The silent panic inside the Kremlin authoritarian systems depend on control, of information, of perception, of expectations. This attack shattered all three. Inside Russia's leadership circles, the concern isn't just embarrassment, it's precedent. If Ukraine can strike Luga today, what stops it from targeting? Refineries near Moscow tomorrow? Rail choke points feeding the southern front next month? Power infrastructure during peak winter demand? The fear isn't collapse tomorrow. The fear is uncertainty. And uncertainty is poison for centralized power. Why this terrifies Russia's elites. For Russia's political and economic elite, this war has largely remained abstract. Their wealth, families, and lifestyles have been insulated geographically and psychologically. That insulation is thinning. Energy infrastructure is not just national property. It's elite revenue, it's leverage, it's personal. When fires burn at export terminals, they burn credibility, contracts, and influence, and that changes internal calculations in ways no battlefield map ever could. The escalation trap. Here's where the situation becomes most dangerous. Russia cannot easily defend its way out of this problem, so it may try to escalate out of it. That could mean larger missile barrages against Ukrainian cities, expanded cyber attacks on Western infrastructure, increased nuclear rhetoric designed to reassert fear. But escalation carries risk. Every response that targets civilians hardens. Western resolve. Every cyber or hybrid attack invites retaliation. Every nuclear threat loses credibility when repeated too often. Russia is powerful, but it is not infinitely flexible. Why the US is watching closely for Washington, this moment is about more than Ukraine. It's about the future of warfare. This strike reinforces a lesson the US military is already studying intensely. Cheap, scalable, autonomous systems can neutralize traditional military advantages. If drones can penetrate Russia's defenses, they can challenge anyone's. That reality is reshaping defense planning from the Pentagon to the Pacific. Ukraine isn't just fighting for survival, it's unintentionally rewriting the rules of modern conflict. Where this leads. The war is entering a phase defined less by territory and more by industrial output, technological adaptation, social endurance. Ukraine is betting it can out-innovate and outlast a larger opponent by making the war too expensive to sustain. Russia is betting it can absorb punishment longer than Ukraine can endure pain. Only one of those strategies depends on constant success, and only one fails catastrophically if adaptation stalls. The bottom line, this drone offensive wasn't about winning the war overnight. It was about changing the trajectory. It told Russia, your borders are permeable, your defenses are stretched, your depth is no longer an advantage. And it told the world something even more important. This war is no longer contained, and it's not slowing down. The war Russia can't shut out. To understand why this moment matters so much, you have to understand how Russia has always fought wars. Historically, Russia doesn't win by speed or precision. It wins by endurance, by absorbing pain, by trading land for time, by stretching enemies until they collapse under the weight of distance, weather, and cost. That strategy worked when wars were fought by armies moving across maps. It works far less well when wars are fought by algorithms, GPS signals, and autonomous drones, because endurance only works if the enemy gets tired first. Ukraine's new strategy is built on a dangerous idea. What if Russia breaks before Ukraine does? The end of strategic depth. For generations, Russian military doctrine relied on one core assumption, that the country's sheer size made it impossible to meaningfully attack its heartland. This war is proving that assumption obsolete. A drone launched from Ukraine today doesn't care about borders. It doesn't care about forests or frozen rivers. It doesn't get tired. It just flies. What once took fleets of bombers and massive logistical chains can now be done by small teams with laptops, satellite navigation, and inexpensive airframes. That's not just a Ukrainian breakthrough. That's a fundamental shift in warfare. Why energy targets are the real battlefield. Ukraine is not striking Russian cities at random. Every major target fits a pattern. Energy equals power. Energy equals revenue. Energy equals warfighting capacity. Russia's ability to sustain this war depends heavily on oil and gas exports, not just to fund military operations, but to stabilize the ruble, pay state salaries, and preserve the illusion of normalcy. By targeting energy infrastructure, Ukraine is attacking the war budget, the domestic economy, the political stability of the regime. This is economic warfare with kinetic tools, and it's far harder to counter than tanks or artillery. The information war is leaking through the walls. Russia still controls television, but it no longer controls reality. Telegram channels, satellite imagery, eyewitness videos, these are now part of everyday information flow. Even citizens who don't actively seek opposition media still encounter fragments of the truth. A video of a burning terminal, a post about explosions, a delayed train, a sudden blackout. Each one chips away at the official story, and authoritarian narratives don't collapse all at once. They erode. The psychology of vulnerability. What Ukraine is doing now is forcing Russian society into a psychological space it hasn't occupied in decades. Uncertainty, not panic, not revolt, but doubt. Doubt about protection, doubt about competence, doubt about how long this can last. That kind of doubt doesn't produce dramatic protests. It produces quiet disengagement, increased emigration, lower morale, subtle resistance. Those effects are slow, but they're corrosive,